y'all. Welcome to Killer Queens, a true crime podcast. I'm your host, Torella, and like most millennials, I've always had an obsession with true crime. On KQ, you'll find light true crime stories, millennial hypes and gripes, some adult language, and maybe a special guest here and there. Just like a 90s sleepover, we're just a couple BFFs hanging out. So gather round and let's launch right into it. Let me tell you what this case has taught me. It has taught me a few things. One of them being, I don't care how old my children are, even if they're in college, they're driving back from college, they're married with children, I will be driving them everywhere they go for the rest of their lives. This case is another example of why everything's terrifying. Everything's terrifying and you just don't know. You just don't know. So let's give you a little synopsis. On December 13th, 2020, Jason Landry was driving home to spend Christmas with his family. He had finished up his first semester at Texas State and was looking forward to Christmas break. Unfortunately, Jason never made it home after his car crashed into a tree. There have been no sightings, no physical evidence found, nothing to indicate where Jason could be, and his case remains unsolved. Hey girl, thanks to Beth for writing this one up. And hey girl, thanks to Valeria Zuniga, Alexis with 2 X's, and Allison Quisenberry for requesting the case. Thank you guys so much. Okay. Jason Landry was described by his father, Kent, as being strong-willed, courageous, and someone who would do anything. He was incredibly optimistic. He always figured everything would just kind of work out in the end. Jason is the youngest of 3 children born to Kent and his wife, Lisa. Lisa is a musician, and Jason really loved music as well. He took after his mom there. The Landrys are a church family. Kent is a pastor. He used to be a lawyer, and now he's a preacher. And so he said, you know, life as a preacher's kid can be really tough. There's a lot of pressure there. He doesn't specify. So there's an episode of Disappeared on this case, and we leaned on that heavily because Kent is involved in that, as well as the law enforcement are involved in it as well. And he doesn't say specifically there's a lot of pressure to be perfect as a preacher's kid, but I think that that's the implication. And one of my best friends growing up is a preacher's kid. Her dad is still a preacher at a very, very small church, kind of out in the country. And growing up, it seemed cool. You know, we got to go to VBS, we'd stay late, we got to go behind everything at the church and stuff like that. But as we got older and she did things that teenagers did, you know, dated boys, started, you know, trying drinking and like whatever, it seemed very judgmental. And there came a time for this particular friend where her parents found out some of the things that she had been involved in that they did not approve of. And I don't know how they got that information. I don't know if they just figured it out or if somebody else came to them or whatever. But she had to get up in front of the church and tell everybody everything. And I remember feeling like that was incredibly fucked up. And I was like, I don't love that. I don't love that. I'm not liking that for you at all. I feel like if they're going to make you get up and say everything that you've done that needs to be laid bare to the whole congregation, which I'm sorry, why does the congregation need any of this information? They are entitled to it because why? I don't think there is a reason. Then they need to get up and confess all of their sins in front of everybody, because newsflash, we all have them. And of course, that was not part of the plan. And I did not love that at all. And if you've been listening for a while, you know that I go to church on a regular basis and stuff like that. I don't rock with that. I can't do that kind of stuff. Arguably, not arguably, factually, there's hypocrisy in every church. There's hypocrisy everywhere, of course, but that was so far. And I was like, I don't, So anyway, I'm not saying Jason's dad would ever do anything like that at all. He seems very, very, his mom doesn't sit for any interviews in that episode. I saw interviews like with news stations and stuff with his dad. I didn't see a ton with his mom, a couple. I didn't see a lot where she's like super, super in-depth or anything like that. He seems super willing to like just be there for your kids. And he doesn't seem like he would be the type of dad who, if you told him you did something, you made a mistake, he'd be like, well, that's it. You're a disgrace or anything like that. He seems very reasonable and, understands that his kid's in college and there's going to be some stuff that his kid tries. And he talks about that later with weed and stuff like that. So he seems very open, but I could also see as a kid in that environment where even though your parents seem cool, and I say cool, like would be cool with maybe some things that they're not a fan of and they would handle it well, that possibly as a child who maybe has seen some other things in the church or something like that might be like, or they don't want to maybe tell you something or have something come out that then might, quote unquote, tarnish your relationship in the church or make you look bad in front of other people, all that kind of stuff. I say all that to say there is a pressure being a preacher's kid, and Kent was aware of that. And he kind of comes out with that right out of the gate. Like, look, I'm a preacher and I get that there's immense pressure with that as the son of a preacher. It's not optional to go to church when you're home. Like we all have to go, we all go together, all that kind of stuff. So this is a case of somebody who went missing and we've not heard from them again. There's no evidence of his whereabouts. No body has been found. The possibility that he chose to walk away is always there. I think once we go through all the evidence, that's going to be a slim possibility, but it is always there unless you have evidence otherwise. Jack Frank is a really good friend of Jason's who also sits for an interview with the show Disappeared. He and Jason met in the 7th grade, and he was super excited when he gets to college and Jason is in the house next to him. And he's like, okay, I know this guy. Like, he felt more comfortable. So Jason was in his first semester at Texas State, and it was 2020. Okay, this is December of 2020. So what is that? That is an unprecedented time. Millennials, how many times have we heard that now? Anyway. We've lost count of our unprecedented times that we've lived through, but this is one of them. So December of 2020, it was his first semester at college, which that's gotta suck. I mean, you're literally like only on online classes and you don't get to go anywhere else. Like that sucks. During his first semester of college, Jason spent a fair amount of time smoking marijuana. And according to Jack, it got worse and worse as the semester went on. And look, 20-year-old kid, 21-year-old kid, 18-year-old, kids in college, whatever, smoking the weeds in college, we're not batting an eye about that, are we? No. Typically, that's not going to be that big of a deal, Could it have negative effects on some things, jobs or so? Yeah, maybe. But it's pretty routine and part of the college experience if you smoke weed. I mean, that's just going to be part of it. We will talk more about that though. And from Jack's perspective, things were getting out of hand there and he was starting to feel concerned. 6 days before Jason went missing, Jack was seeing Jason every single day. He said that Monday of that week, completely normal. Jason was the person that he'd always known Jason to be. No concerns that day. He said Jason was doing his normal day-to-day routine. He was spending a lot of time in his room doing online learning, which, of course, that's where they all were doing their learning. So that was his version of going to class. And he said, of course, at that time, social life, lackluster, nothing going on there. He did notice, though, that as the semester had gone on, that Jason was relying more heavily on smoking weed. And specifically, as that week had gone on, he was increasing the amount of weed that he was smoking daily. And he said he noticed, and he'd noticed it over the course of the semester and that week as well, that the more weed that he smoked, the more off the rails his thought process got, to the point that he said Jason had not been sleeping very much. He'd not been eating, and he'd been almost exclusively smoking weed, which is also kind of weird with the eating thing, because you would think, I mean, I haven't smoked a ton of weed, but I can kill a bag of Sun Chips on that, right? Usually you get the munchies. I mean, that's why it's a thing. But Jason, he was almost exclusively ingesting weed. He wasn't really eating, drinking. He wasn't doing his normal. I don't know how his hygiene was, but I know he wasn't sleeping and he wasn't eating, and he was, that is concerning if you're smoking so much weed that you're not ingesting anything else or doing anything else at all. Jason's dad is like, look, I went to college too. Am I surprised that a kid in college is smoking weed? No, I'm not. He said, when COVID hit, Jason is a really, really extroverted person. His social life kind of got taken away. I mean, like that, right? So he kind of was trying to figure out what to do and how to move forward and what he wanted to do with his life and, all those kind of things. And having only online classes, he was really struggling with, and a lot of people did at that time. A lot of people did. So you can't, not that you'd fault him anyway, but that can't be easy, As the semester came to a close and all of Jason's finals were completed, he was going to make the drive home from Missouri City, where Texas State was, for Christmas. And so on December 13th, 2020, Jason was getting ready to head home. And he had been texting with Jack, and Jack said, hey man, just please be really careful and make sure you get some sleep. Because again, he knew that Jason had not been sleeping and he hadn't been eating. He did say that he was still cognitive. He was still coherent, but he still was concerned for him, and specifically that he didn't have enough sleep to make the drive home. And so Jason texted him back and said, hey man, I've got it under control. I'm good. I really appreciate you being concerned, but I'll be fine. I got some sleep earlier. I'm rested and ready to go, basically. So Jason leaves at 10:55 p.m. from his apartment, and he's heading to his parents' house in Missouri City. And I'm sorry, I actually think I said that backwards a minute ago. I think I said he was driving home from Missouri City. He was driving home to Missouri City. My bad. The Texas State is in San Marcos. So he's driving home to Missouri City. This is a suburb of Houston. And according to Jeff Ferry, a captain with the Caldwell County Sheriff's Department, a volunteer firefighting had been driving down a road, Salt Flat Road, that night, and he came upon a vehicle that had been in an accident. And so the driver's side of the vehicle was up against a tree and a fence line. There was damage on the driver's side of the vehicle. The headlights were still on. The driver's seat was unoccupied. The vehicle was empty. The volunteer firefighter called in the accident, and as is protocol, a Texas Highway State Patrol officer, troopers, responded. So on his way to the scene, he drove up and down the road looking for the driver, and he wanted to make sure that nobody was hurt. Had the driver wandered off, because there's nobody in the car, right? So where's the driver? Had he wandered off? Is he injured? Does he need medical attention? That kind of thing. But they don't find anybody. And it's strange, but it's not completely out of the ordinary, because it is and can be in all different kinds of areas. It's not super, super uncommon to find a vehicle that has been wrecked or stalled out or whatever, and whoever is driving the vehicle to leave the vehicle, just leave it there because they were intoxicated. So they don't want to have a police officer come up and find them and they're intoxicated and now they're going to get arrested or a ticket or whatever. So they leave, they'll go home, go wherever. Sometimes they'll then call and report their vehicle stolen just to give it a reason why it was there or whatever. But it's not totally uncommon for vehicles to be left. So there's a possibility that this person is injured and needs medical care, but they drive up and down, they kind of look around, they don't see anybody. So they think, well, then maybe that's what happened. Maybe it was a person who was intoxicated who has left their vehicle and they're going to come back for it. So it was getting colder there, especially for this area of Texas. So they were a little concerned about the temperature dropping. But again, they don't find anybody. So more highway patrol troopers arrived and they found some clothes about 900 feet to the south of the collision scene. And with the clothes that were found, they determined that the driver of the vehicle must be completely naked because it looked like whoever had driven the vehicle and in the direction that they were walking, they had just taken their clothes off and dropped them, dropped an item as they went. So it looked like somebody was disrobing and just leaving a trail of their clothes behind. They also found a backpack that had a wallet inside. It also had a prescription bottle with 10 marijuana blunts inside. So Captain Ferry said there was no indication that anybody had passed away as a result of this accident, no loss of life, and the evidence pointed to this being a college student who was intoxicated. He probably went home. He probably caught a ride with somebody. He probably something. So he'll probably turn up. So they find the ID inside the wallet. The ID belongs to Jason Landry. They call Kent and Lisa, who the vehicle is registered to. And so they get a call at 2:00 in the morning from a state trooper. And they say, hey, I'm at the scene of this vehicle and it's been in an accident, but we believe that Jason Landry is driving the car or was driving the car, but he's not here at the scene. Have you heard from him? Do you know where he is? And his parents are like, no, we haven't heard from him. He's supposed to be driving home, but we don't know where he is. And they're like, okay. So Kent is like, what am I supposed to do? Do I come there? We live in Houston, so it's going to be a little bit before we would get there. And the state trooper is like, yeah. I don't know. Hang on. I'll call you back. So Kent's like, well, fuck this. I'm getting in the car and I'm driving there. So he gets in the car. He's headed that way. And while he's on his way, he gets a call from Lisa. So I didn't mention that the car is found in a city called Luling. So it's obviously in between the two cities that he's traveling to and from. So he's in Luling is where the accident took place. So while he's driving, Lisa calls him and says, hey, by the way, the car has already been towed. It's not even there. And he's like, okay, well, can you call them back and get an exact location of the crash site? I need to get there. So she calls, she gets the crash site information, she gives it to him. And he says, I'm driving there and I'm thinking when I get there, there's going to be sirens. There's going to be police officers there. The site's going to be at the very least, taped off because they're going to be looking into this. And he said when he got there, there was nothing. It was completely dark. There were no police officers there. There was nobody there. And remember, they found the backpack, they found the clothes, they found all that stuff. They left it there. So all that stuff was still there. So when he gets there, he can see where the vehicle had gone off the road. He could see where it was at the tree and the fence and all that. And he found Jason's clothes and was like, yeah, these are definitely Jason's, because one of the things that was very specific to Jason is he loved wearing what he called funny socks or goofy socks. And the socks that were there were, unmistakably Jason's goofy socks. So while he was there, Kent records everything, like records where everything is. Cause again, he's a lawyer previously. So he's like, I know that this is evidence that needs to be at the very least documented or whatever. So he documented everything before he picked it up. But the investigators didn't do that. And he's like, why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they take the clothes? If they actually worked the scene, why would they not have done that? And Kent says from the beginning, the troopers just assumed that it was a college student who got too high. He ran off the road and he got out of there so he didn't get in trouble, basically. And he was wandering the woods somewhere. But also, Kent makes the point, okay, so what? So what if he was intoxicated? What if he was so fucking high that he didn't know what he was doing and he drove off the road or whatever? Or a deer jumped out in front of it, whatever the case is, so what if it is a one vehicle accident and he's intoxicated? Like, that is neither here nor there. If he is injured for any reason, you need to find him and get him medical help. So it would be one thing if the car was like gently pulled over onto the side of the road, everything was turned off, everything was locked up. And like he had just parked the car for whatever reason and left it. But that's not what happened. It was an accident. The car was involved in an accident. The car was busted up pretty good. He had to kick the back window out to get out because remember his door was up against the tree and fence line or whatever. So he had to get out through the back of the car. Wouldn't you try to find that person in case they're severely injured? Maybe you don't think they're severely injured, but they could be. You don't know. Why would you just like look around and be like, oh, well, he's obviously taking all his clothes off here and this is definitely a wreck. Tow the car, he'll find his way home. Like, I don't like that. I don't like that. The trooper who was at the scene who had called them said that he couldn't find the phone. Like, he didn't see Jason's phone anywhere. So Kent used the Find My iPhone app and he found out that the phone was inside the car because it was at the towing place. So it had gotten wedged in between like the console and the seat. At this point, there is no evidence suggesting where Jason is. And at this point, Kent is the only person who is looking for Jason. So he calls the highway patrol and they bring in Texas Search and Rescue, or TEXSAR. TEXSAR is a nonprofit that will come in for smaller communities that don't have the resources to do like larger scale searches. So they search acres of land by ground, horse, aerial, dogs, however they search, that's what they did. They searched around Jason's crash site and they ended up finding a retention pond, and search dogs kept hitting on that pond as like a possible location for Jason. So they end up really focusing on this pond. And Kent says when he learned about the pond, all he could think of and envision was his child floating in this water. Like, oh my gosh, it's so terrifying. So they eventually get permission from the landowner to drain the pond. Fortunately, Jason was not there. And it's not unfortunately Jason's not there, but that now they still don't know where he is. It's like you're back to square one because you don't know where he is. And they started to wonder, are we even looking in the right places? Is there some shallow grave somewhere that we can't find because somebody's put him there? The what ifs start to really take over. So December 19th is day 6 of Jason going missing. There had been air searches at this point, K9 teams, they'd used drones. There were hundreds of thousands of drone images taken, according to Captain Ferry, and they haven't found anything. And so Kent is like, we must be looking in the wrong place. Like this, why would we not find anything? But after the searchers finished on December the 19th, investigators decided to stop searching at this point. They had no evidence. So then they began forensics on the car. And I really hope that how that's worded and everything is incorrect, because why would you wait until then to start that? But anyway, they went through the evidence. They did DNA swabs. They did they took fingerprints. Captain Ferry says they were very aggressive in looking for video footage from convenience stores in the area or like farm cameras. They thought maybe something had happened, between the two locations, but they found nothing. So finally, they used Jason's digital data to track his movements on December the 13th. And he'd been using the Waze app for directions. And with Waze, your phone pings at every cell tower you pass. So they were able to track his trip right up until the crash. And it also shows when somebody minimizes the app. So they're able to see that as well. At 11:05 p.m., Jason was driving on Texas 80 and he passed under Interstate 35 in San Marcos. He was driving south on Texas 80 into Caldwell County and was in Martindale at about 11:11 p.m. At 11:15, he passed Texas 130, still driving on 80, and passed through several small towns. At 11:24, he was about a half an hour into his drive, and then he enters Luling on Texas 80. As he drives through the intersection with Hackberry Street, where Texas 80 turns into Austin Street, he quits using the Waze app and he opens Snapchat. So he moves Waze out of the way, he opens Snapchat, and reportedly he'd received, what are they called on Snapchat? A message? A post? A DM? I don't know Snapchat. But he gets something from his ex-girlfriend on Snapchat, so he opens that to see the message or whatever containment verb Snapchat uses. So while he's doing that, he doesn't have Waze pulled up. He misses a turn, okay? So he was supposed to have made a turn, a right turn onto Magnolia, but he drove through that intersection, and then now he's on the road that turns into Salt Flat Road, and that's where he crashes. So they think he crashes at 11:34 p.m. The problem is, though, that they don't know why he crashed. So there was no indication at the scene to determine what happened. There's no deer laying there in front of his car or anything like that. There's no other car that, if he'd gotten in a vehicle, and there's no like a bumper from another car or anything like that. They don't see anything. So police are wondering okay, maybe a deer or a wild hog or something, because there is wild hog issues there, had come out, wandered out into the road or whatever, and he'd swerved to miss, overcorrect, something like that. Or was he, because we know he'd minimized the Waze app to use the Snapchat app, was he looking at whatever it was that she sent on Snapchat and he just wasn't paying attention and he's missed his turn and he's veering on the road a little bit or whatever, and then he overcorrects and he crashes, then. And of course, we get the age-old, this is America, you're allowed to disappear. So we also have to keep the possibility that he crashed his car and just walked away and wanted to start a new life. By February of 2021, Jason was still missing and the media was getting more involved. There were several Facebook pages created in the hopes of finding him. The police are still of the mindset that Jason wandered into the woods and they just haven't found him yet. And again, with the amount of wild hogs in the area, other wildlife in the area, they're like, did wildlife get to him? Something like that. Could he have gotten a concussion or something had he sustained an injury that he gets out, he starts walking, he starts removing his clothes, because that can happen sometimes when you are disoriented. Even if it is very cold outside, sometimes you get so cold that your body feels hot and all of those things, and you think that you need to remove your clothing. So had he removed his clothing for whatever reason and became really disoriented, perhaps he had hit his head or something like that, and he lost consciousness and then animals got to him. Kent believes, though, that the police didn't want to consider any other possibility, other than he just got in a wreck and wandered off kind of thing. And so there was nothing to do in their minds. And Kent really wanted to be sure that they ran down all the avenues. What if it was not a single car accident? What if there was somebody else involved? We need to figure that out. So retired FBI agent Abel Pena was asked by his daughter, who also attended Texas State, to look into Jason's disappearance. So his daughter had dated Jason's best friend. And she and Jason knew each other and they were pretty close. So she's like, hey, he went missing. Nobody has ever found him. Nobody knows where he is. Like, could you look into this? So Abel contacted Kent and let him know that he could help search for his son. And Abel is a part of Project Absentus, which is a nonprofit with a team of retired FBI agents, Border Patrol, and other intel folks. And so they're there to help the family with authorities as well as to assist the authorities. And they offered their services free of charge to the Landry family. And Kent was happy to have somebody other than the sheriff's department looking into the case. And he was hoping that a different set of eyes would bring something up, get some kind of lead or something, and get a conclusion. So Abel reaches out to the Caldwell County Sheriff's Department and said that, it's a balancing act because they want it to be clear that they don't want to take over, but they do want to work together and, get some answers. And Captain Ferry said at the time, that was great. They were happy to have another set of eyes on it. Like, let's go. Abel says he learned that the Sheriff's Department thought that this was an intoxicated college student who crashed his car. And Abel said Jason was a normal college kid experimenting with marijuana. He believed that the case should be looked at differently. Jason's clothes being left and scattered at the scene was a red flag for Abel. His car immediately being towed was another red flag because if there was any evidence left behind, it would have been trampled on at that point. Abel and his team were also wondering why Jason was driving on Salt Flat Road in the first place. So they wanted to know, was he just distracted? Did he get lost? Or had somebody guided him or forced him down that road? I'm going to be honest. I thought that we knew why he was on that road. I mean, I guess it's just a speculation, but he had Snapchat open at the time that he missed his turn. They know that from the digital forensics, right? So aren't we assuming that he just missed his turn because he was not paying attention? Like, that happens. Or, I mean, I will, if I'm on a road trip or whatever, if we're going down to the beach or whatever, I don't always have my GPS talking to me out loud. I will have it quiet so it doesn't keep, because, it's like, it keeps on like, get ready to turn, get ready to turn. Are you ready to turn? You're about to turn, and interrupts my music and like my flow and whatever. So I'll have her just be quiet and I'll just keep an eye on it. Like, okay, in a few minutes, I'm going to make this turn. In a few miles, I'm going to make this turn or whatever. Have I then got distracted and in my own head or looking around or talking or whatever, and then missed that turn that I knew was coming up in only 1 mile? Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I don't know. But we do know that he had minimized Waze and he'd opened Snapchat. So I thought we knew that, but okay. Agent, do we call him Agent Abel Pena? And Project Absentus are going door to door. They're talking to the people in Luling. He says initially they didn't get a lot of information. There's a lot of drug dealers in Luling, and these people are afraid to be considered snitches. So they decided to set up an anonymous tip line. They didn't think they were going to get a lot of tips because, again, people made it pretty clear that they were nervous to give away any information, but they did get tips. So they had gotten some tips that, there were nefarious things that had happened to Jason. They'd also gotten tips that he'd been spotted places, and so they wanted to vet all of them out. None of the sightings panned out. None of them ended up being Jason, of course. But they did get a tip that somebody else might have been driving the car at the time that it crashed. And they said that somebody had done something to Jason, taken the car, and then crashed it on purpose to stage it, to make it look like it was just a one-car crash, and so they wouldn't think anything of it, and then, like, dropped his clothes everywhere, like, scattered them around. Maybe. I don't know. And all of this would have happened between 11:30 p.m. and 12:30 a.m. It's like a 65-minute window that whatever happened to Jason happened before the police officer came up. Because, again, we know when his phone stopped being used. And then we know when the, volunteer fire department person found the car. So, pretty crazy. So what happened in the span of about an hour on a 3 to 4 mile stretch of road with presumably nobody else around? I mean, there's nothing there, right? So, of course, Abel is getting a lot of phone calls of people saying, I know what happened. I know what happened. I know what happened. It was, somebody had accosted him, but they didn't really want to give names because even if they were arrested, what if they found out? What would happen to their families? If they were considered snitches, all of that stuff. Abel ends up getting a letter at his home address. So about 13 months after Jason had gone missing, Agent Pena receives a letter at his home address. And he said it was really weird getting a letter, first of all, at his home address, and he didn't know who it was from. But whoever it was went to extraordinary effort to get his home address to send this letter to. So he felt like that increased the likelihood that it was real. Again, I'm not sure about that. I mean, this is on the show Disappeared. You might be hard pressed to find an episode of The Disappeared where a family member doesn't say, we got emails or phone calls or whatever of somebody saying they knew what happened to my loved one. They are the ones who did something to my loved one. Their husband did it. Their girlfriend did it. Like whatever. They were in the room when it happened and those things turned out to be completely false. Some of them will send an email and say, hey, if you give me $100,000, I'll tell you what happened or I'll lead you to their body, stuff like that. That happens in a lot of missing persons cases. It's disgusting, but it absolutely happens. So the police were like, I don't know about this. There's a lot of different reasons why somebody might want to come forward with information. Sometimes it's just to insert themselves in an investigation because they're pieces of dirty brown water trash, but you have to be really careful about that. But Abel and his team felt that because of the way that they got the information and that it matched up with a lot of the calls that they'd been getting on their anonymous tip line, that it might be real. So what they were hearing was that whatever had happened to Jason was nefarious and that the drug dealers in the area had done it. Kent said he also got an email from somebody saying that Jason had been disposed of by a wood chipper like in the movie Fargo. And he was like, I cannot believe somebody would send that to me. And I had to envision that and just pray it wasn't true. People are disgusting. They're absolutely disgusting. There's no evidence to suggest that. Is it possible? I guess so. But people are just awful. So the Caldwell Sheriff's Department said, look, is it possible that a college student is driving home for Christmas break and he drives through Luling and he, for whatever reason, encounters convicts and they decide to attack him, accost him, do something to him for whatever reason. And then they stage a scene, scatter his clothes everywhere, purposely wreck a car, leave it, is it possible? Yeah. But they don't think that happened. And they said that every bit of hard evidence that they have points away from that. And he said that's when they stopped having a working relationship with Abel and his team. And Abel says if you believe that Jason just walked off and disappeared, in his opinion, there's not going to be much effort to look into anything other than looking at this as a missing persons case. And he says it's important to explore all the options and, could something criminal have happened? He said there were fingerprints taken. There was DNA taken. He says that has never been tested. I really don't know why they wouldn't test that. Captain Ferry says, look, if we thought that DNA evidence or those fingerprints were going to lead us anywhere, we would do something with them, but we don't think they're going to do anything. And he even says, how many different people have ever been in your car? So if we run those, it's probably just going to come back to other people that have been in his car. Okay, sure. But what if it doesn't? What if you get a hit on somebody who does have a criminal history and you cannot place that Jason knew this person in any way, shape, or form? You cannot place any logical reason or any relationship or establish a connection or anything between Jason and this person. And so there's no reason for this person to have been in his car. And you also know that it's not like this person happened upon the car because it had been sitting out there for months and months or anything. The volunteer fire department person came up on it literally right after it crashed. So if you find prints in that car or on that car that belong to somebody that you can't establish a connection with, and you can't establish any other reason that they would be inside that vehicle, then you might be onto something here as far as an outside person having done something to him. But you won't know that unless you run the prints. If you run the prints and they come back to his dad, okay, well, they're his dad's prints, and his dad would have presumably been in the car. Fine. But if you find prints from somebody that has no reason to have ever been in the car, then I understand his logic there, but your logic also says, okay, but what if it's somebody who doesn't have a reason to be in the car? Like, I don't know why you wouldn't just run that, you know? But he says, we don't have anything else to update. We don't think that's going to do anything. So here we are. At the end of 2021, the Texas Attorney General's office opened up a cold case unit, and they looked at Jason's case. And Abel says he'll provide whatever. Captain Ferry says he'll provide whatever. He does believe that it was a tragedy, but not a crime. At the 1-year mark of Jason's disappearance, there were 2 vigils held, one in Missouri City, one in Luling, and his dad didn't go to either. He was at the crash site, and, you know, he said, just like you would want to go put flowers on, you know, a loved one's grave, I just felt like that's where I needed to be. It's really, really heartbreaking to think about this. In June of 2024, Jason's parents attended CrimeCon in Nashville and were able to connect with other families of missing persons, as well as get the word out about Jason. And I did also read that the other agencies that did look at Jason's case, like other investigative agencies, I think the Attorney General's office, but for some reason I'm blanking on exactly which agencies, but other departments looked at it, and they looked at all the evidence that they had, and they all agreed with the sheriff's office that it was a 1-car crash, that Jason was likely disoriented or something, and that's why he took his clothes off and he wandered around and either succumbed to injuries or succumbed to the weather or something, but that he's just not been found yet. December 13th, 2024 marked 4 years of Jason being gone, and the family held a candlelight vigil in Luling at the site of the crash. There is currently a $20,000 reward being offered for information that leads to Jason's whereabouts. And if you have any information, please call Sergeant Rachel Kading at the Office of the Attorney General. That is area code 512-936-0742. And that's the case. Let me know what you think. And if you have any other information, please share this episode with any true crime groups or anything, anywhere where they are talking about missing persons cases or sharing missing persons cases. You never know what is going to be the thing that somebody sees who's like, oh, you know what? I saw something that night, but I didn't think it was important, or I didn't even realize this had happened. And so now the thing that I saw or the information that I have or whatever, I can see how it would be useful. So please do share that. And actually, you know, in saying that, share any episodes that you think are interesting in any true crime groups that you think they would, you know, anybody would be interested in hearing it, or that you think could genuinely help, you know? Because again, you see people interested in true crime all the time, and you see people be like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that the information I had would be useful, you know? So anyway, that's just anytime. You could do that with any episode. It also helps get the show out there, but I mean, if somebody hears something, you know, that it could be a game changer. So anyway, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you on the next episode. Love you. Bye. If you like this episode, be sure to like this episode and follow the show so that you never miss out on new episodes. Get in on the conversation on Facebook and Instagram. You can find us at Killer Queens Pod, or you can join our Facebook discussion group at Killer Queens Podcast, where we discuss cases covered on the show and all things 90s. If you want to submit a case to be covered on the show, visit killerqueenspodcast.com/case submission and just complete the form. And if we cover the case, we'll give you a shout out on the show. Lilas.